Hello and welcome to today's Trainer Education webinar, Dare to be a Successful Project Manager, hosted by HRDQ and presented by Lou Russell. Today's webinar will last approximately an hour. Do note there will be a lot of interaction on this webinar, so you want to take a look. It's usually up in the top right-hand corner of your screen, but you want to find something that might say chat. For your computer, it may say question, but it's a box where you can interact now with Lou throughout the session. You can send in any questions that you have, and we'll either answer those right as they come in. If we have time, we'll answer them at the end of the session. But go ahead and interact with us through the chat or question box that's usually on the top right-hand side of your screen. My name is Sarah Montgomery, and I will moderate today's webinar. I am in business development for HRDQ, a publisher of research-based training solutions that improve the performance of individuals, teams, and organizations. Today's presenter is Lou Russell, President and CEO of Russell Martin & Associates. She is the author of the Accelerated Learning Field Book, Project Management for Trainers, IT Leadership Alchemy, Leadership Training, and 10 Steps to Successful Project Management. She is a frequent contributor to Computer World, Cutter Executive Reports, and Network World, among others, and publishes the monthly Learning Flash electronic newsletter. A popular speaker, Lou addresses national and international conferences such as the Project Management Institute, Project World, and Lotus Sphere. She holds a computer science degree from Purdue University, where she taught database and programming classes, and a master's in instructional technology from Indiana University. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today, Lou.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Thanks, everyone, for coming. You have a big crowd, so move in so we can all fit. I'm really excited to be able to share my weird passion for project management. I believe that project management is all about communicating, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to share our methods and a little bit of our tools. Some of them you're going to receive afterwards, and really just try to talk to you about how to get real with project management and not have it sort of become the project. So that's what we're going to do today. As I go through the slides, if you have any questions, please just put them in the chat window, and I will, or in your case, maybe even the question window. And Sarah, I am not moving slides. There we go. Thank you. I'm not sure who did that, you or me. So here we go. So this is our process for doing project management. And I know if you are HRDQ fans like I am, that probably you wandered into this from some sort of training or learning background, but maybe not. We have all kinds of folks now in training, since we have this whole e-learning technology component to it. But basically, as you look at this model with me, let me go through it really quickly. We say dare to properly manage resources up here because this is just a mnemonic to help you remember the 4 phases. So D for define, P for plan, M for manage, and which is a cheat because they're both manage, and R for review. As you see these little black words down here underneath, those are the Project Management Institute terms for the exact same phases. So when you see those, I'll say more about that in a minute, but just realize that's why they're there. I created another set of words that I thought was kind of simpler, and the meaning maybe was a little clearer, at least to me. I'm going to walk you through very quickly all 4 of these phases, and you're not going to get a chance to try every single one. I'm going to give you a couple of tools and techniques from each one and talk about the challenges in them. Now, what happens here is that most people, I think, skip define. And the output of define is the project charter. And the reason the project charter is so important is because the project charter figures out why are we doing this. So the word I would like you, if you're sitting there with some notes, the word I'd like you to write above define is why, W-H-Y. So define answers the question from an organizational perspective. Why are we spending money on this instead of something else? So everybody's in a zero-sum game, whether you're in a not-for-profit or a for-profit, doesn't really matter, right? None of us have enough money to do all the stuff we want to do. So this answers the question, why? Why this? Why did someone tell me to do this instead of doing something else? Very critical question, because if you don't know why you're doing it, it's going to be really hard to do a plan. That means you don't understand it at all. So you're building a plan about something you don't understand, which is a bad idea. Okay, plan answers the question, then how? Once I know why the business is spending money, what the business case is in a sense, then plan is about how can I bring the resources together to get that done and in a sense hit that return on investment. Most rookies start project management right here. They create a schedule first. And I think that's partially because this is where project management software lives. Okay, this is the area of sort of Microsoft Project or lots of the cloud project management software packages that are out there now. Even SharePoint, if you use SharePoint for project management. So this is interesting. So people like jump right into laying out the schedule. And think about it. That's a bad idea if I don't know what was the executive thinking. Why are we doing this? Why is there the opinion that there's a return on investment? So again, it's going why on define, how on plan. Now, this is where I'm really going to hurt your head. Manage is about not control. So on your notes, I would like you to strike through control right there. I'm going to do it for you on mine. Okay, strike through control. And what I want you to think about instead of control is I want you right up here in manage to think about adapt. So in manage, we're actually rolling with the punches. There is no such thing as control in project management, and I know that's blasphemy to a lot of you. You really want to control it, but you can't. The world is too crazy. All of us are juggling too many projects, moving from one to another. We don't have the resources we need. We have to beg and borrow in highly matrixed organizations. So there's no way. You can't control all the moving pieces. What you can do, though, is adapt. So the idea of adapting and the idea of resiliency is so, so critical to managing a project. So in a sense, some people would say, well, you know what, you don't even start the project. You don't start working on the project until you get to manage, which is kind of true. We're figuring out why we're doing it, what's our strategy, how are we going to do it, and then let's go. And the minute you go, boom, the whole thing's going to change because that's how it goes. I'll talk more about that. So let's say we get through this, we live through our project, we get our project done. The final phase is review. Like good trainers, we know that learning happens in the debrief. In this case, review is about learning about the project management process. Did the project management process go well? And what would we do differently now that we know how projects work where we live? So it's that idea, again, of looking back at the experience and saying, what would I tune to work better next time? So this is the overall strategy of what we're going to walk through. So again, it's why, how, adapt, and learn. And these are the grown-up words down here, as I said, from the Project Management Institute. So I'm going to just basically pause on each one of these phases with you today, and we're going to go through you know, kind of some basics. But before we get to that, let me share the agenda with you so you're a little bit more clear about that. So first thing we have to start with is project management and your to-do list. Because if you can't manage your everyday time, it's going to make getting a project done pretty much impossible. Now, I would love to tell you that I have the holy grail secret of managing your time. Oh, no, this is not the case. And I think managing your time is a bit like life balance. It's a journey. It's not a destination. But I do want to share some tips with you and some sort of telling yourself the truth bit. We'll start with that. So you can see how a lot of times we take ourselves out with the way with our belief system, I guess is what I should say. Then we'll go into each of the 4 phases. Define, which creates the project charter. Plan, which creates the project plan, the schedule, basically, which is what everyone wants to see, right? And then finally, how do we adapt? But more importantly, even as we're adapting, how do we influence everyone to flow with us? And then finally, how do we get better every time by reflecting on what we've learned from our projects? So that's how it lays out. That's what we're going to go through. And again, if you have any comments or questions, just throw them right into your chat window or your question window if that's what you have. And I will do my best to keep an eye on that. You have 292 close friends out there right now, so I will do my best to answer those. We're also going to be sending some answers later on in text for things that I miss. Okay, so let's move on. I want you to take a little piece of scrap paper next to your computer somewhere, and really quickly, I want you to write down 10 things that you're supposed to be doing right now that are on your current to-do list, but you're on this webinar instead. Hopefully you're not trying to do them at the same time. But write them down quickly. What are 10 things on your current to-do list? You have 30 seconds. Now, if you don't have 10, that's okay. You may have really big ones, so you can stop before 10. This is not a contest. Okay, 5 more seconds. All right, so move away from your task list that you just created. So that's a to-do list. So what I would like you to do is think, you stay right on your list right now, and I'm going to share some thoughts about what we put on our to-do list. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I love checking things off. Absolutely love checking things off. Could you raise your hand if you love checking things off? In fact, you love it so much that you write things down that are already done and check them off, you know, just like advanced checking off. So that looks good. We have a lot of people that are kind of, you know, like to have that reinforcement every day. And good job raising your hands, by the way. So when we do that, you know, that's sort of our measure at the end of the day that we were good, that we had a good day, right? We checked some stuff off, we got some work done. It's hard to get positive reinforcement because there's always more work to do, but that's kind of our way to measure that we're moving along. So stay on your list for a minute. And I want you to look at your list, and if there's anything on your list that you couldn't complete if someone gave you 4 hours uninterrupted. By the way, at work you're probably never going to get 4 hours uninterrupted. But let's say magically you ended up with 4 hours uninterrupted. Is there anything on your to-do list right now that you could not finish in 4 hours uninterrupted? Could not. Okay? If that's the case, put a P next to it, P for project. So anything you couldn't finish in 4 hours uninterrupted, basically. Okay, next question. If you need anyone's help to get anything on your list done, even if it's just approval, but if you need anyone's help, like I need Sarah's help to get this webinar going, if I need anyone else's help to get my thing on my list done, then put a P next to it if it doesn't have one already. If you already have a P, just don't worry about it anymore. Okay, so is there anything on there that you have to work with others? You need someone else's help. Okay. Now, has the thing on your list, the activity or the task, been on your to-do list for more than a month? So you can see I'm reading the opposite of these questions. Hope that doesn't freak you out. This is your criteria for what should be on the list. So if anything's been on your to-do list for more than a month, write a P next to it if it was still blank. Okay, and this is a really hard one, but this happens. Do you really know what you're supposed to be doing on the project? And put it another way is, someone's asked you to do something, and every time you sort of suggest this is what the deliverable is, they go, no, that's not it. So is there anything on your to-do list that literally you really just don't even know what they mean? So if that's true and it's still blank, put a P next to it. You probably had that one already. Okay. Type in the, and I'm just going to pick one randomly, but type in the chat window something that's on your list that's still blank. Anybody that feels like they could share. Go ahead and type right into that chat window anything on your list that's still blank. Okay, so I've got one, and one of the ones here says, oh, those are great. You can keep typing, and I'll go over them. One of them is communicating updates. So that sounds like sending updates out about my projects. One of them is clean my desk, and one of them is check emails. So let's look at each one of those separately. So clean my desk, I think, would be dependent on how messed up your desk was, right? Okay, I don't know. But cleaning your desk sounds like a task to me. And a task is what goes on your to-do list. So a task is cleaning my desk. Could I get it done in less than 4 hours uninterrupted, hopefully? And do I need anyone else's help? No, not really. I need a trash can, right? So that's a task. And a task, by definition, has a beginning and an end. And it's a pretty small unit of work. So the cool thing about a task is it's something that you can probably delegate to others as well. In this case, maybe not, but you could. So when we go to delegate work in a project, we want to delegate a task because it's small enough to understand and basically clear what someone's supposed to be doing. Task is the smallest unit of work, most important beginning and end. Okay, so you can check it off. That's what goes on your to-do list. So cleaning off your desk is one. Does checking email have a beginning and an end? There's a great quote that was just put in the chat window. It says, if a cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind, of what then is an empty desk a sign of? I like that one. I have a picture of Einstein's desk in my office, actually. All right, excellent. So if the task has a beginning and the end, is email a task, checking email a task? Right? So checking email never ends. That's a problem. So actually checking email is a process, not a task. And if you write it on your to-do list and check it off, it just comes back. It's a collection of never-ending tasks that repeat again and again and again. So that's what, and processes in general, if it's a functional process of the business, so let's say payroll. Payroll is a process. We would love payroll to continue forever. That's very important to most of us. And it goes the same way every month, pretty much, right? And it also, a lot of times, a functional process will a lot of times have a dedicated staff. That's different than a project, too, which has temporary staff, okay? So I'm going to get to project in a minute. But a process is a collection of things that repeat again and again. And in terms of your to-do list, a task is on your to-do list. The process should probably be on your calendar. So there was another one on there that was updates, communicating updates. Someone put it on the list here. And communicating updates, so on a regular basis, I am going to create an update. That's a little bit like me. I create a monthly newsletter every month. Now, what I should do, it always goes out approximately, I shouldn't say always, if it's a weekend it wouldn't, but usually around the 1st. And what happens is I wait until, I don't know, the 30th and go, oh, I have to do the newsletter. Wouldn't it be smarter to hold 4 hours on my calendar for doing the newsletter so I don't end up doing it Sunday afternoon? So this is the kind of discipline, that discipline of putting that process, hold that time for it on your calendar, not on your to-do list. It irritates us on our to-do list because we don't get to check it off. It just keeps coming back. So finally, project. So here's a definition of a project. It has a beginning and an end, and it's made up of a collection of tasks. Notice the confusion. Process and project are both made up of a collection of tasks, but project has a beginning and an end, although it's not always clear, and process does not. So somebody type now that you know these definitions, somebody type a project in the chat window. And you may have already checked it. I'll look at the ones that are already here too. Okay, put a project with a beginning and an end, something you're working on right now that in theory is going to end and has multiple steps. Okay? Yeah, so very good feedback about the email being a process. And okay, so here's a good one. Somebody is creating mandatory training for sexual harassment. Now, I would say creating the mandatory training for sexual harassment, developing that training, is a project. Annually holding that training is a process. I'm going to say that again. Creating learning experiences are projects. Delivering and scheduling and following up and maintaining is a process. So in this particular post in the window, in my question window, it says annual mandatory training for sexual harassment, which means maybe it was or is going to be a project to develop it initially, and then there will be a process to maintain it. And this becomes really important on a to-do list because a project shouldn't be on your to-do list either. The tasks you need to do should be on your to-do list for this week, but you need project documentation somewhere else, and that's where we're going to go next with the project charter. So excellent job. So if you keep tasks on your to-do list, project documentation in another place, but the tasks you have to do this week on your to-do list, and processes on your calendar, you will find that you are way, way more effective at getting stuff done and getting the right stuff done and staying focused. So that's just a little way for us to head into project management. But let me tell you some other bad news. This is not me. I don't know who this is. Sarah, is this you? Given the next, I want you to look, this is going to be like therapy. I want you to look on your list now, and I want you to think about, given the next 24 hours, so from now until 24 hours from now, look at the list in front of you and what can you actually get done. So put a mark next to everything you can get done on your to-do list that's on your list. Okay? You're not going to share this. This is completely your own experience. Okay? So put a mark next to everything you're going to complete. Then I want you to real quickly write on the clock how much time will it take. Just guess on the clock. So this is interrupted time. People are going to be bugging you. You're going to have other stuff going on. You know, there's going to be some firefighting, whatever. But how many hours will each one of those things you checked off take? Or minutes if you have that. Okay? Okay? And then I want you to total that as you're doing that math. So this is what I do. Right? I make my to-do list in the morning. I put the hours next to it, and it totals 18. So right away I've lied to myself. I've already set myself up to look like this, be completely frustrated. So now I want you to chat with me for a minute in the question box or chat window. Like everybody, and I'm going to give you, I'll watch this go by and I will show you, I will kind of give you a sense of what the average is. But I want you to think about how many hours in an average workday can you really focus on working on something that you have to, really think, like course development or process design, that creation. So out of whatever your average workday is. So here they come. Okay, so some of the people, we actually had one person with 6 hours, which is unbelievable. Okay, there's a 5, I think, might be one of our higher ones. The average, I would say, someone has 10. That's all they do. Very nice. Very nice. Okay. 1 hour at a time, and then I have to take a break, and then maybe I'd get 4 out of the day. I like that. 10's extremely rare. But let me tell you, I can see a handful of people with 0. So put in the chat window, those of you that put 0, where do you work? Okay, where do you work? And the average is definitely 1 or 2. So in 1 or 2 hours a day to work on our projects, which means a 4-hour task is going to potentially take us 4 days. And other people are looking at us going, why did it take 4 days to get that 4-hour task done? Because I have 500, 400 4-hour tasks I'm working on, right? So in the chat window again, in the window, where do you work? If you have 0, where do you work? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So people are saying, yeah, I work at night, or I work, at Starbucks and hide, or I hide somewhere. Lots of corporate hiding going on right now. So I think we have to be really straight with ourselves. We have to get a little bit more organized. I talk to myself. I'm in training to be more scalable and sustainable. So I need my time with my family. I need my time to refresh. It's sacred to me. I literally try not to really look at emails the whole weekend from Friday until Monday morning. And I know some of you do not have jobs you can do that. Since I'm the queen, I can do that, I guess. But it's really interesting to think about, really, why am I frustrated at the end of every day? Well, am I telling myself the truth? And this is all about telling yourself the truth. So share that with your friends. So on the next page, I just give you an open question. Throw in the chat window for me. What do you think is different about projects now? If you've been like me, I've been around for a while. Looks like somebody's either from Purdue or from IU neighborhood on there. Sandra, looks like. So what do you do? I mean, what do you do? What's different about projects? What do you think? Throw it in the chat window. What are some things you think are different? Okay. Anybody have any ideas? Like when you used to do projects, how are they different now? If you used to do course development, how's it different now? Anybody? Okay, so I see a couple things. Folks are saying it's much more, there's more technology, so there's more complexity to it. So yeah, isn't that interesting? If you're doing e-learning, we're doing an IT project and a learning and development project, and you probably went to school for one or the other, but unlikely you went to school for both. So one side of you is out of your pond, as I said to Sarah earlier. Okay, that's one. You need all these other people. So I like to talk about projects as a flash mob. People show up temporarily to do something together, sometimes just through social media or virtual. So in other words, we run lots of our projects through email, of course. Right? So people show up together temporarily, they do things, and they disperse back out to their other stuff they're supposed to be doing. So this is how projects are being done right now in the workplace. There's all these matrix teams that come temporarily together for a meeting. They move that project on a little. Now they reassemble somewhere else with different people to do a different project. Everybody's working on multiple projects. Everybody needs someone else. And there's a comment out here, and you're supposed to make a strongly measurable return on investment on every single project. So there's tons and tons of pressure and tons of chaos. So in order to manage it, you really can't keep it in your head anymore, and that's what this process is for that we're going to go through. So let's go ahead over to a little bit about roles, and then we'll head into talking about the project charter. So one of the things that's really critical is you need one of each of these. One, only one. And if you have more, you automatically have dramatically increased the risk of failure of your project. The project sponsor and the project manager role are often very much confused. And in all my project management books, we spend a lot of time making sure that this is clear. The project sponsor is generally a leader or executive of some sort who had or was given the grand idea that something should happen to make more money or drive costs out of the business. So there is some sense of return on investment here. We call it a business objective in project management. There can only be one. So a project can either increase revenue or avoid cost. Only one can be the priority. You might get the other one sort of, but when things get dicey, one usually has to be sort of sacrificed to the project management gods so you can actually hit the return on investment. So some of you, if you could put in the chat window right now, how many of you are doing increased revenue, IR, you can just put IR if you want, and how many of your projects are avoid cost, AC? Just put in whether you're doing an increased revenue or avoid cost project, if the one you're thinking of. Any projects? Think of one project, and is it increased revenue primarily or avoid cost? Go ahead and type those right into that window. And I'll tell you what the consensus is again. Okay, great. Okay, so we got a couple people coming in with increasing revenue. I think that's changing. You know what? 4 years ago, they were all drive cost out of business. So that's changing, and now people are turning around again with new products and really trying to grab that market share. So the project sponsor's job, even as the project goes on, is to make sure it's really going to meet this, you know, the company has bet on this strategy to either get more money or drop their cost, right? The project manager then takes the business objective, translates this strategy into tactical project objectives, we also call them deliverables, with metrics hopefully, and basically creates a strategy, a project plan, to build these deliverables to meet the needs of this return on investment. So the project sponsors at the sky level, the project managers in the weeds. Really important to differentiate between these two. Thank you very much for sharing that. Okay, so a little bit of a, you can put S or M, S for sponsor, M for manager in the chat window as we go through this. This is a little quiz. Who provides status reports to the stakeholders? The S for sponsor, M for manager. Type that right in. Okay, S for sponsor, M for manager. Okay, I think most of you got this. It's manager, right? Because manager, executives generally don't send status reports to anybody, so that makes sense. Okay, how about assigns tasks to people, M or S? Again, managers in the weeds, sponsors above, so manager's the right answer to this one. Good job. Doing very well. How about project sponsor or manager for determines the business objectives? Okay, that's that return on investment. Good, 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 right? That's sponsor. Nicely done. Okay, how about determine the project objectives? Again, that's a review of that last slide, so you're all over that one. Right, the answer to that one is also manager. Okay, so this is a little bit tricky but not. Who recommends what to do when money, time, or quality are threatened on your project? Like, we're not going to make it. The sponsor or the manager? Who makes the recommendation? I'm getting kind of different answers on this one. S for sponsor, M for manager. What do you think for this one? Okay, we got yeah, we get a lot of different answers here. Good. Okay. It's actually the manager, and I think we have consensus on that one. It's actually a manager. Because the manager is in the weeds, so they can make recommendations. So what the manager should never do, because it's career suicide, is go up to the sponsor and say, my project's in trouble, help, help, what should I do, right? They're in the weeds. They have to tell the sponsor, my project's in trouble, this is what I think I should do. Do you agree? Okay, so that, I think that's really important. That would be career suicide to just whine, by the way. If you've ever done that, you know it's career suicide. And then the sponsor would ultimately make the choice, an educated choice based on the recommendation of the manager. Okay, well done, everyone. Good job playing my little game there. Okay, so let's now jump into define. I'm sorry, I forgot this. Before that, I want to share with you that all the material that I'm sharing with you today is completely consistent with the project management body of knowledge, which is called the PMBOK, and they do certification. If any of you happen to be getting certified through PMI or are already certified through PMI and you let me know, my email's on the very last page, we can get you a PDU for participating in this webinar today because you have to keep recertified. If you have no idea what I just said, don't worry about it. But if you want to learn more about the Project Management Institute, this is their website right here, and they're the keeper of the best practices of project management, which is really what the PMBOK is. And they do certification like ASCD would do, CPLP, only probably there's way more. They've been doing a lot longer. And what I've done is I've taken the PMBOK, which is like the encyclopedia of, does everyone remember what an encyclopedia was? All right, we'll do it this way. So Wikipedia of project management. It's not a how-to book, right? It's everything you would ever want to try. So you can't just like start at page 1 and read it through. And I've tried to pull out and make it as lean as possible and as simple as possible. So with my process, you would add stuff if it became necessary because of the complexity of your project, but you could start here. So that's kind of just to give you the kind of philosophy around the whole outside bit. All right, excellent. Okay, so let's jump into define. And these are the kind of things, as I mentioned, that we do in define. We set the business objectives. We clarify that with the sponsor. We create a project scope, in this case a diagram that I'm going to show you. We translate those business objectives into measurable project objectives. And this is a learning objective to a course developer. Okay? And if it's an e-learning, there's also going to be system objectives, of course. Then we're going to figure out what our risk is, what our constraints are. A risk is something that might happen. A constraint is something we're stuck with. And then I'm going to spend a little time talking about the importance of a communications plan and governance. So let me show you an example. So we just said that the business objective has to be one of these three. And I always talk about it, the Greek goddess of business, Arrakis. There really isn't a Greek goddess of business, Arrakis, but it just sounds like one. The three are increase revenue, avoid cost, and improve service. Now here you're getting kind of mad at me because you didn't have the option of increased service before when we were talking about it, and fair enough, I usually leave this one out, and here's the reason. I think a lot of people use improved service as a way of not being measured. So let's say you're in a call center and you're rolling out some training and e-learning training, let's say, some learning, and you're going to measure customer service metrics. You know, you're going to do some surveys of your customers and see if those go up after the e-learning. Makes perfect sense. Okay, but this is really an enabler to get to one of these. So if I'm trying to grow customer service, improve customer service, what am I really trying to do up here? Am I trying to increase revenue or avoid costs when I grow customer service? Just throw it in the chat window if you have a theory on this. Okay, what am I trying to do? Am I trying to increase? What am I trying to do? Yeah, so exactly right. So really, if I'm trying to grow customer service, it's not because I'm wonderful. It's because I want to maintain my market share or grow my market share. So it's all about increased revenue, right? If I'm training my internal employees, that's really, in other words, I'm giving better service to my internal employees. To me, a lot of times that's usually avoid cost because we're trying to retain them. Retention is a cost project. And the reason you care about this is the funding you get and the attention and the priority you get for doing an avoid cost project versus an increased revenue project. Increased revenue gets all the money. Avoid cost tends to get, so like safety training, right? People will say, oh, just check it off, you know. A lot of times I'll ask, do you want them to be able to put out a fire, or do you just want to check off they attended training to put off a fire and pass the test? And usually the answer is literally, I want them to check off, I want compliance. The goal is not behavioral change. Isn't that weird? But we struggle with that in training all the time. So again, this is the business objective. The project sponsor owns this. And Arrakis is simply increase revenue, avoid cost. We're going to roll improve service up. But the ultimate question is, what's the return on investment for the business? Okay, we did this before, so I'm going to skip this page. This is a scope diagram. It is one of the deliverables of the project charter, and it's the one that we are probably most famous for because it's a visual technique. And the reason I like a visual technique on this is because it gives you a common language for explaining what happened. So let me kind of walk through this really quickly. This is called a scope diagram. Way more about all of this in the books, but pretend this is a United Way day of caring, a volunteer day of caring, and you have been blessed with the responsibility from an executive to coordinate having employees go do a day of service for a local charity. So in that sponsor's mind, I'm going to tell you the story, in that sponsor's mind, the sponsor's thinking, how hard can that be? Just get some people and go help a charity, right? So they're thinking, I haven't asked you to do a project, I've asked you to do a task. It's not that hard. So you draw this picture and you show them. You're the sponsor. Sometimes I'm going to need some governance, some decision makings out of you. By the way, you're the person in this project because you're the project manager, so you're in the center box. These are the stakeholders around the outside. In other words, roles that you have to work with to get this thing done. So what do you get from the sponsor? You get governance, you get budget, and you're going to keep updating them with the status. You also thought you better get corporate communications involved. So you're going to send them what you're trying to do and the limited budget you have for corporate communications, and they're going to get you a communication plan. You also have employees, and you have to find out what employees are available and send them some training and work out some kind of schedule. You also want to get some catering so you can feed your folks while they're there, and then you have charities. So I'd like you to put in the chat window as I tell that story, what are a couple things, there are 3 graphical errors on this, not necessarily functional, well kind of functional. There's 3 things wrong with this model. And even if you've never seen it before, you're going to be able to pick up what's wrong with this model. So there's 3 little things that are wrong. So see if you can let me know what those 3 things are. Anybody see any that are wrong? Okay, I've got one coming in right now. Good. Okay, so here's one that's wrong. One is schedule. Do you see schedule? It has an arrow on both ends. That's against rules because here's what happens. Each one of these arrows represents work that needs to be done. And as you know, if I'm going to create an employee schedule, there's going to be a couple of back and forth. So I'm going to have to ask them. We already asked them for their availability. And then maybe I send a draft schedule, and then I get feedback. So basically what I'm doing by putting a double-headed arrow is hiding how complex this really is and how much work it's going to take. And one of the great benefits of the scope diagram is exactly that we're communicating to everyone else that sees it, including the sponsor. I would definitely go over this with the sponsor and everyone else I need to work with, so they see how much is involved. When I show this to the sponsor, they may say, wow, this is a lot of work, and I know you're on blah, blah, blah project. I'm going to give this to someone else, or we're not going to do it right now because we don't have the resources. That's the best answer you can get. At the beginning of a project, you want to find that out in the middle or at the end, right? So the whole motto here is bad news early is good news. So that's good. So double-headed arrows are bad. You might have noticed that these were backwards. I saw someone wrote something like this. Food is going to the project and budget is going to catering. That's actually right. Yeah, that one's right. And this should bother you. We're sending volunteers to the charity, but we never spoke to them. Someone wrote that on there. Good job. Right? We need another arrow here because we've never even checked out what charities to go to. We just sent volunteers to one, and they just showed up on the doorstep. Okay. And the other one that nobody noticed, but this is a really important one, is see this line that's drawn between 2 stakeholders? Every arrow in a scope diagram has to touch the middle, or you don't know about it as a project manager. So this is out of scope. So what this is trying to show in our little story is that the corporate communications and the sponsor talk all the time. So they could make decisions about the volunteer day of caring that no one tells us about. That's a risk factor. So what I would do to illustrate that is not draw a solid line, but I'm just going to make it look like this for now. I would draw a dotted line. This would really be a dotted line, just like that. Okay? So there's plenty more to talk about here, but this is just an example. And this is going to pay forward. This is going to drive my communication plans because I already know my stakeholders, my governance plans. I've already got some ideas about risk. So every single deliverable that comes out of our project management process is used for something. That is so important. Totally used for something. Okay? And that really, really matters. Okay. So fabulous. Good job with that. This is a project charter. You're going to get these. You can see I have our little, our NING, our virtual community. We have a place called the Virtual Playground. It's down here on the bottom right-hand side. And you are also going to get this stuff in the mail. But if there's anything else, we also have a 4th grade project management model. We have this DARE model for kids in school. So that's out there for free, too, if anybody wants it. But this is a template for the project charter, and you're going to receive this from HRDQ. It's in PowerPoint, so you can kind of build your own stuff. So you can see the scope diagram goes here. You can put it on as another piece of paper. Your business objective, your project objectives, risk, constraints. This is called a risk mitigation table down here. So you'll be getting all this. There's a second page as well that I'll show you in a minute. So let's go into plan now. Remember, now plan is building the schedule. Building the schedule is very, very, very important. That's what everybody wants to see, right? And I'm going to start this by talking about ADDIE. Some of you are familiar with ADDIE. ADDIE is sort of a traditional course development methodology, and this is what ADDIE stands for: analyze, design, develop, implement, and evaluate. So when we're creating good learning facilitation, good learning and development courses, let's just say, we want to analyze the needs, come up with the requirements, sketch out what we're going to do, a blueprint of some sort, could storyboard, for example, in e-learning, build it, which now with e-learning takes a lot more stuff, right, hosting and LMS interface and all that kind of stuff, and then implement it, which is roll it out, maybe do an alpha and beta class if you're lucky, and then evaluate. And ADDIE is, did learning occur? Then you go into maintenance and you hold that class over and over again, right, for the future. And now at this point it's not a project anymore, it's a process like we talked about in the beginning. So if you were to Google ADDIE, A-D-D-I-E, or look at the ASCD site or any place, it's everywhere. This traditional methodology, you could Google this, you know, in a couple of seconds, and you could find all the tasks that somebody has decided, Florida State University or Indiana University, one of those places, or I think also Syracuse was pretty famous for this as well. And they have a list of all the tasks that need to be done to do analysis, all the tasks that have to be done to do design. And so it makes a really nice cheat to figure out what tasks are needed, at least some of the tasks that are needed, get a start on it on my plan. But I also have my scope diagram, and each one of those arrows, remember, is implying tasks to be done. So I have lots of I call them cheats or shortcuts to get to that. So I'm just going to use ADDIE. ADDIE is a traditional one. IT has a very similar system development methodology, new product development. This does not just live in education, whatever field you're in. There's one very similar to this. This is a traditional problem-solving model. I'm not going to talk much about Agile or anything like that today, which is a different approach. It's sort of like a whole bunch of small ones of these. But some of you may be working or trying to learn more about SAM. There's a great book by Allen Interaction called Leaving ADDIE for SAM that I highly recommend for that. Okay, so using these as my milestones. So if I'm going to share with this on the next page. Okay, I'm using these same ADDIE things. Instead of develop, I put build, but basically this is ADDIE. Okay, and I'm using milestones. And milestones, in this case, are just saying that's done. It's just a date. So analyze is done, design is done, build is done, implement is done, evaluate is done. Okay? And again, we're doing volunteer day of caring, so this is the same thing, our little case study we've been working on. So this says, if analyze is done, requirements are done. So I'd like you to put in the chat window now for me, if you had, this is a math exercise again, if you had 100% of time to spend on analysis, design, build, and implement, we'll leave evaluate out for now. If I were going to spend 100% of my time, what percentage would I put in analyze, what percent would I put in design, what build, and what implement? Can you just throw what you think that would be? Like, how much time would you spend on each one? And I can see the letters, so you can just put A, you know, 20%, D, 30%, whatever you think, B, I. So throw a couple of those in there for me. Let me see how you think you would allocate this. This is a little word quiz or a little math quiz. They should equal 100, by the way. That would be good. Okay, good. Thank you. Nice job. All right, so we have a couple of theories. So some people are saying, wow, I think we should just divide it all up. So everyone should have about 25%. But actually in academic theory, in IT theory, and in many other disciplines, new product development, these two are supposed to be 2/3 of your effort. So 2/3 of your effort here, 1/3 for everything else. So the idea is if I do a great job understanding what I'm building, I can build real fast. If I skip this and shortcut, which is so tempting because, right, we want to start building PowerPoint slides or we want to start, building our e-learning modules. We jump right into build. We love build because we can check it off. Analyze and design, we're never really sure when we're done. So if I don't spend 2/3 here, I always say if I don't spend 2/3 here, I don't get 1/3 here. So I do 1/3 here, I have 4/3 here. Because what happens in testing, you discover all these requirements that you didn't know about because you didn't take time to find them. And that will always happen to some extent, but a lot of them, if I didn't spend enough time on the front end. And because it's in testing, it's a lot more disruptive to fix it. It's going to impact a lot more things. Videos will have to be redone. Graphics will have to be redone, blah, blah, blah. So it's more costly, and it ends up usually making the projects go way over. So as a guideline, when you're doing your plan, kind of keep an eye on the front end being around 2/3 and the back end being around 1/3. It takes some courage to do this. Definitely takes some courage. But if I use those numbers, then I can say when each one of these milestones ends, which is what this little date is here. Analysis has to end by, starts on 6/1, has to end by 6/20. So if I drill into that, then I figure out what all my tasks are that I want to do as part of analysis. In this case, I've just pulled these tasks or Post-its. I tried to make them look like Post-its from these arrows. What are all the kind of analysis things I have to do to get ready for the day of caring? Finalize the charity, review with the sponsor, finalize cater, da-da-da-da, okay? They're going to fit right in here. I got to get all these done between 6/1 and 6/20. Then I can line them all up. I can put 6/20 here, I can put 6/1 here, and I can work back from the date. Well, if I want the whole thing done by 6/20, the caterer needs to be in place 2 days before. I can't do the caterer until I get the employees all invited. I have good numbers. So see, I'm just working backwards to calculate. All right, so I'm giving myself a full week on the front end to finalize the charity if I look forward 4 days right? Okay. So this is basically how you work back from a date. Notice I have not, this is kind of blasphemy, I have not put this will take 4 days. In a way, I don't care. I just care that the drop-dead date has to be done by the 18th or I'm in big trouble. So another shortcut for project management is don't tell other people how long a task should take. Just tell them when you need it by and ask them if they can get it done by then. So I think we lose accountability when we feel it's our responsibility to assign hours. It's like, give an example, I'm a training person, right, and I go to the IT person and I say, I've got you allocated to spend 6 hours hosting my modules. So you have to do that on this day. That's completely rude. You don't know what their workload is. They have a million projects too. So instead you say, I need the hosting of my modules done by this date. When do you need them by? And, whatever. Okay, so it makes people a lot more respectful. Then I have to put names on them, and I can drop them all into a spreadsheet, simple spreadsheet. If you've not used project management software before, get the process down before you get the tool down. I'd say use Excel. I highly recommend it, and then you can upload it into bigger things later as you grow in maturity. But always be clear what part you're confused about. Is it the tool? Or is it about the process of project management? And we know that from training. So basically, each one of those little tasks I've put in a spreadsheet. I've assigned a task owner to them. Now, what this task owner does is they're responsible that it gets done. Joe may or may not do established messaging needed. I don't really care. Joe is my go-to person. I want a single contact. It's like a little mini project manager, right? And Joe is responsible to push that through. And you guys know in terms of accountability, if it's not given to one person, it doesn't get done. And Joe's got to get it to me by 6:15. So I can email this spreadsheet to all my stakeholders, all the people that are on the sheet, and ahead of time at the very beginning, and send it out every Monday as an update or whatever day makes sense for you. And now I have kind of had the respect of, or shown the respect that I sent this out way ahead of time. Tell me if you're not going to be able to meet this date, and then we'll talk. Instead of coming up to them in an emergency an hour before and say, I got to get this today. Because doesn't that bug you when people do that? It really, really bugs me. So that's the kind of thing. We're really trying to be respectful, create collaboration, create communication, pay it all forward. And in a minute, I'm going to show you how this grows up into your status report like I just talked about. Okay, so this is another part of the template that you'll get. It's a project plan. It's actually a PowerPoint table. So you might want to just take these headings and drop them into Excel. It might make it a little bit easier. You can sort now, as I was just instructed the other day, because I'm so old school on that. You can sort in a Word table as well. So if you want to do it in Word, I think that would work too. But most project management tools, if you ever want to upload it into a project management tool, they interface with Excel. So they would probably make you take it back to Excel anyway before it could go anywhere else. So again, this is the location for some of our free templates if it doesn't come through for you. So then what happens? Well, then we're in Manage, and Manage is all about people skills. It's all about influencing. You've got everything you've done you really understand your requirements, the project's about to start, or you understand your project charter. You've got a plan. Everything's going to change, and this is all about adapting and working with people. And remember, no control. No control here at all. Right? This is out. Okay, so as we work through this, which this is where the rubber hits the road for sure, we can use that status report or that little dashboard that we created for our plan. And what I do is I check off when something's complete, and you could sort by this so that all the completed ones were at the top, like a fundraising thermometer or something. That'd be kind of cool. I put anything that's late red. You'll have to decide whether this is appropriate to your culture or not, with some comments in here about why. Usually the first one that goes red is me, so I kind of put that out there to kind of let people see, well, she's going to make people red if they're late. I should pay attention. And one of my other favorite ones is strike through, because then I don't keep trying to put something back in. Every time we talk about it, we put it back in, and then we remember, oh, that's why we took it out. Right? So this is just a way of logging things we intentionally removed. And I update this every Monday, and I send it out to my project team and everybody. It gets to be fun to be able to check stuff off. So again, totally about communicating, not about calling people out or embarrassing people or anything like that, because they will get you back if you do that. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. So, so this is really simple. It may be too simple for you. You may need something more complicated than this, but this is a good start. All right. Now, 3 things that people don't do well, and I just want to end with this because I think this is really, really critical. So a couple of guidelines on this. The big 3 plans. Once you've mastered basic project management techniques like we just talked about, you do a decent job on creating a project charter, a decent job on project plan, and you're working always on your influencing skills. Seek first to understand, as Covey would say. I have found, especially lately with all the matrixed work going on, that what has killed off more projects or staggered projects, amazingly staggered projects, that were going really well, is the idea that in communications, there's 2 parts to communication. One is telling people how your project's going, status reporting, right? But the other one is messaging, PR, organizational change, and having some understanding of if a whole group rallies against you in some sort of crisis or something is discovered that's really, really wrong, ahead of time decide what you're going to do about that. If people don't hear any news about your project, they will assume it's bad. We say no news is bad news to stakeholders, and especially to a sponsor. So preemptive strike with communication and messaging is huge, absolutely huge. I'm going to show you an example of that in a minute. The other thing that's huge is governance. Now, there's two parts to governance. Ahead of time, when everyone's getting along, who gets to approve what deliverables so we move on? Like, who gets to approve the storyboard? Who gets to approve the alpha class? Who gets to approve the final iteration of SAM or whatever, right? So we want that explicit. So when we get to that and other people are voting and stuff that aren't supposed to, we don't have to, it all gets stalled. The other thing is who gets to change things, like who gets to change the scope, who gets to add new modules. So if you can get this stuff straight before you need it, it's very powerful. If you're too chicken to ask the important questions like this, until the end, it's going to kill you. It's going to stop everything. And then equally important, especially with training, is who's going to run the process of maintaining it afterwards. And e-learning is IT, so you have all this other maintenance issues like security and backups and all that kind of stuff as well. If you do e-learning, there's a whole bunch more to this. So who owns the process? Not the project manager. And if you do, that's great too, but at least you know you own it. Now you're the process manager, you're not the project manager. The project has ended. So a couple of examples of that we have in the templates you'll get, as part of the project charter, you'll do the communication strategy and the governance strategy. Okay, so you'll have a little table for that. Again, maybe better in Excel or Microsoft Word. Chip Knighty, who is a partner of ours, he runs a company called Catalyst OC. I love, this is at his website, and it's free for everyone. Just if you haven't got a good flow for how to create corporate messaging or organizational messaging, this is great. But notice, continue to communicate. Bad news early is good news. People, you know, I was a programmer at AT&T, and one time they told us that we had a mandatory happy hour on Friday across the street at this hotel. 3 to 5, all IT personnel had to be there. So everybody put in the chat window what you would think if someone sent you that email. Okay, what would you think was about to happen? So go ahead and drop. So here's the there. You've never been asked to a mandatory happy hour ever before. In fact, no, you didn't even think they knew you were alive. So what would happen? What would be your sense? What would be your sense of what was going on? Okay, yeah, so someone says, I'd be scared that there were going to be layoffs. Exactly. So we're all totally freaked out. And all they were doing is they were implementing what they call the technical ladder so that you could be promoted within IT and not have to move out of IT for promotion, which was actually a good thing, but it took them forever to sell it because we were still also wounded, sure that there was some big rock that was supposed to fall on our head in a minute. So Chip's model is really a nice, good overview for looking at that. And here's another plan that you're going to get, which is the things you should be thinking about as you hand off from project to process. This is huge. There is a ton of work here. And I'm rolling out a new advanced project management course right now that just came out of alpha. We're doing the beta in a couple weeks. And as I finalize it, this list has really helped me figure out how to transition it into production where I don't own it anymore. So I have a whole project plan just for transition, a charter and a project plan just for transition. Okay, so I'm going to go really quickly through this because we're running out of time. I'm actually going to skip a couple of exercises here. But review is really important. Even if you do it by yourself, think about what happened. Debrief yourself so at least you get to learn from the experience. That's really, really huge. Think about, you might try this. We do this at the open of all our classes. We do the ASTD Project Management for Learning Professional courses. We do both online and the live. And there's one coming up, I think, in very soon in a live one. The next one's in LA, and then there's one in Orlando, and we have an online one starting again. We're in the middle of one right now. It's very fun, so if you're interested. But this is a great project review. You might try this with a group that just ended a project or try it yourself. You just name a negative emotion that occurred during a project, rank it 1 through 10 in terms of intensity, and then write down something that triggered it. And then do the same thing with the positive emotion, which is this one. And what you'll find is every person will have been frustrated by this. The first emotion is usually frustration or stress, negative. And the triggers are all the same thing every time. People don't communicate, no accountability. It's never bad critical path, or it's never tool-based. It's always communication. And the positive emotions tell you how people are motivated. So that's very positive as a leader, too. So let me finish up. these are the 5 deadly sins that stop projects. Seek first to blame, figure out whose fault it is. That's useless. I'm busy, so I confuse that with making progress. Telling people we can do that instead of thinking about it in the moment, or its evil cousin, oh sure, that will just take a minute. Try never to say that. And treating all projects as if they're the same, and they're not at all. So we can make heavenly atonements or heavenly truths and change these. Seek first to collaborate. I'm busy doing the things that are meeting the goals of the organization, in other words, the ROI of the project, the business goals. Instead of saying yes or no, we say as a project manager to our sponsor, yes, we can do that and the impact is this. And if someone asks us how long something's going to take, we give ourselves the time to find out instead of making up the wrong answer and treating each project so unique, and everyone is going to surprise you somewhere along the line. So just to wrap up, think about where your pain is, and if you do nothing else, I would say stay focused by getting that project charter done. That is huge. I also want to share with you this the Rocket game, which I worked with HRDQ to create. And we use this in all our project management classes. It's a great way because people have to create an initial estimate. We actually make them fill out a project charter. You don't have to do that. They make an estimate and then they build, and then we debrief around what did you learn from this? What would you do differently? How did you behave on this like you would behave in your real projects? This is a great exercise. And you can use it for a lot of things. So if you also use the HRDQ profiles, for example, their assessments, you can also divide up teams by assessments unbeknownst to them and do the Rocket game and really flesh out how communication breaks down in a project. So we actually spread this through a whole 1 day of our 2-day class. And we make them do a project charter, we make them do a project schedule, we make them implement, we make them review using the templates. So you can kind of go with a 1.5-hour version to a 1-day version, and really, really useful. Of course, I'm biased. I love all the HRDQ simulations. They're part of our repertoire. So with that, I want to turn it back to Sarah, who's going to share a really cool special deal with you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Lou. And thank you, everyone on the line. We had a great turnout today, and the participation has been wonderful. So you do get the Rocket, the complete game. It is 35% off. There is a coupon, and you'll see that. You will get that email to you this afternoon, which might help you a little bit find it easier. And that email will come along with the templates that Lou has talked about today as well. But head to HRDQstore.com, and you'll want to use the coupon code WebinarRocket at the checkout. It does expire at the end of the month, but it's 35% off. A lot of the parts and everything in the game, they are reusable. So they're a great tool to have in your kit. And if you have any additional questions, go ahead and type those into the chat window, and we will be emailing those out to everyone as well, all the questions that have come in and responses from Lou as well. So thank you so much, Lou, and thank you everyone today on the line for your participation. We hope you found it enjoyable.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks everybody for all your help and participation. And my email's on the screen too, so if you need anything, let me know. Have a great week.